Hey everybody, sorry about that. We've got a little bit of technical issues. Is anybody hearing an echo before we start? Is anybody here? Okay, awesome. Okay, so welcome to another table tavern talks. Sorry, I have an echo, so this is gonna be a little more difficult for me to talk, but that's personal, and I'll deal with that. Welcome to Tavern Talks, chapter 6. We're going to go over the goods and the bads and how to make your NPCs come alive. So, of course, Corey's back. He's been venturing across the mountains in southern Colorado.
No, I'm actually in Montana right now,
Oh,
just
okay.
outside of Glacier. Yeah, Glacier National Park. So it was an off day from traveling and seeing stuff. So I'm glad I could grab some internet and join you guys.
Awesome.
Super
And
jealous, by the way, but
cannot hear him. Oh, that's not good.
and we'll be right back, folks.
All right, so we're going to swap back to the original sound and we'll be right back.
Sorry, guys.
All right, we are back. It was a little crazy, but we got everything working. So,
Sorry, guys, that was my bad. I convinced him to try OBS Ninja, and it's a little wonky. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but
yeah.
in due time.
We did start this almost an hour ago, and we thought that we were going to be able to catch up, but it just did not give us that option, apparently. So, tonight we are yet again going to dive into the DMG. Specifically, this one will be our talk about the reason I'm moving around is to grab this wonderful book here. I'm going to show off it because everybody loves this book. And we're going to talk about NPCs and how to make them more exciting and more represented to your players, so that your players fall in love with them or hate them, depending on your drive. And before we go through anything, and I know Corey wasn't here last week, but one thing that was mentioned last week that was really good, especially for your NPCs, is a theme. Definitely try to make sure that you have an agenda for an NPC if it's going to be important. Because, as Russell told us last week, theme is kind of with the driving factor. But if you have a theme for the NPC, whether it's anger or friendship or greed, whatever the theme could be, it allows you to have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Also, I find that a lot of the times, if you get the NPC and fit them in such a situation with the party that they really attach
Hey,
to
hey,
them,
hey.
you might find them as somebody joining your party on their adventures,
Correct.
which could create a hireling sort of situation. It could be kind of interesting as well.
True.
Yeah, I did a little NPC cards for characters that they met when I was running a Waterdeep campaign, and the little cards had NPC style stats, not stats that you would use for combat, but things that would matter as far as an NPC. So like how much grit this NPC has, right? And grit was actually a stat. In other words, if you ask them to do something, how much are they going to put into doing that for you later? Um, how personable are they, right? Are they somebody who can actually do some social things for you, or are they, uh, a beggar on the street that smells bad and doesn't communicate very well? So, having some ways to, like you were saying, I like the idea of having them become almost like tools of the group, but as well as having them have some flair and flavor to be able to accomplish things for the party if asked to do stuff.
Absolutely. Another point is um, you mentioned like having that vagabond, the drunk kind of character. Another thing is totally flipping the script on that. Something a friend of mine, my mentor, had in place was this whole story where you come across this guy who's a bit of a bum. He's always drinking. He's always drunk. He's the god. I can't remember the name of the god right now, but it's from like the Zeus pantheon and all that. It's the guy that forges Zeus's lightning bolts, and you find out it's actually him. And when you come across his forge, you get these big iron golems, and then the drunk guy's like, "Oh, hey, you're the guys from the tavern. How's it going?" Right, like really just kind of give them that and that's another thing that's great for npcs is they can really flip things on you and give you some amazing comical moments, which like I find that comes to the heart of the game a lot of the time is the comedy. Like that's how I got my wife to join in the game, was her overhearing me online with my buddies when I was a player, and she's just like, "You guys are laughing so much. You guys are having so much fun. I want in on that. How do I play?" And then now she's a big player. She loves playing the game.
Oh, I look like I'm crazy on the screen right now. For some reason, the video is just acting up left and right, which really stinks. But yeah, no, bringing those moments into a game definitely bring the character alive. What's your opinion on this, Corey? What's a good tip that you would say helps bring your NPCs to life?
I think I mean, we talked a little bit about theme. I think that bringing a character to life also means that you know what that character wants, knows what they're willing to do for that want or that desire. And at least you, as the GM, need to know what stands in that character's way, right? Um, if you, if the players uh, aren't really the ones standing in the way. They're not a villain or an enemy or some kind of NPC to overcome. Um, just knowing those things, right? So the character, they meet somebody on the street, and that person is uh, really upset because they're trying to woo somebody, you know, their childhood sweetheart or whatever, and you know, there's this other character, this other NPC that is standing in their way. You know, you've got kind of like the Gaston of the town standing in the way, right? And that can be a very interesting NPC to have this, you know, kind of Ichabod Crane, ugly, scrawny person who wants to, you know, um, pursue their love, but there's this Gastonish character, this, you know, big brawny popular guy in the way, and having that conflict that isn't a conflict for the party, right? You're not saying, hey, it's your problem to solve, but it's a conflict within the NPC that they then get to know, and whether they do anything about it or not doesn't matter. It's just it brings that NPC to life, to what James was asking about.
Right.
I've actually used that exact kind of scenario before and added a little extra to it with the fact that this was a town called Purveyor's Port. So it's a small harbor that trades with goods and everything. So one of the traveling merchants had a crush on the woman who ran the restaurant at the harbor. So the players kind of helped that work out, and now they've got this traveling merchant. So he's going to pop up. They don't know it. He's going to pop up later on, and he's going to be like another big piece. So that's another thing, is having seemingly small NPCs that, if they do interact, could become later on a much larger part of the story, and really aids in that progression, which also comes to another thing that I'm sure the players hate, but we as DMs probably do enjoy, is taking certain NPCs like that and giving them a good and honorable death. Um,
No, never.
but
Never have I killed a random
no,
NPC. Yeah.
no.
I thought that was
Um,
like just tradition. Like you just had to,
right?
you make somebody build 6 or 7 like
Mhm.
very important people in their players' lives, and then you roll a dice, and then you go, oh, yeah, that one's gonna die.
But it's like it's the bait and switch, right?
Right.
You bait them in with a little bit of this, and then you switch the whole script on them, and they're like, "Oh wow, this guy's actually kind of a big deal. This is kind of cool." And now we love this guy. For my party, it was the merchant, Turnip Bellwater. He was a little gnome. He's quite bashful. He really liked the ladies, but didn't quite know how to speak with them. So that was the little guy for that, right? And now that the players love him, they don't. They were able to help him out with his romance, and they got a folding boat out of it. So that's kind of a cool thing.
That is pretty
But
cool.
that's kind of a fun way to deal with that. Also to add like an NPC that is very seemingly small, but like a big corner piece to a war. Like a NPC that, for instance, I have one that is in actuality, a sentient collapsing sun, which a
Nice.
godlike dragon was able to give physical form. She appears to be a fire genasi. Her name's Ember, and she is kind of building this rapport. As they see her over time, they just see her as this servant to this very powerful character, but she is actually for the purpose of essentially going supernova on an army that the party will eventually have to face.
Very cool.
So that's just those are ideas. Those are ways to really add to that.
So that brings a question up for you, James. I'll pass it
Yeah.
over to you. How do you bring to life very powerful characters that end up being like sponsors or quest givers, or people that that do have a lot of power in your world? And how do you bring them to life and show the party that this is an important, powerful person? And how do you do that?
So I've done it one of two ways. One is with the actual just descriptive and understanding of who that person is. When you start to make them work to get introduction to somebody, in my Tomb of Annihilation game, when you have to go speak to a merchant prince or princess, you have to do something of great honor or deed in order to even have an ability to speak to them. So they have to they have to find out, okay, what do I do, and then for that one specifically, I gave them multiple options. They went and they started hunting for notice boards. They went and there's what they call dinosaur races, which was the most fun in the world. I'm telling you, if you never play Tomb of Annihilation, just go run a dinosaur race with a group and just let them have fun with it. It was an absolute blast for an entire day. Off topic there, but the person won the dinosaur race and actually had to do skill challenges, and it's all set up through the book. But once he won that option, he used that as his way of getting in touch with now a bigger person. And those stepping stones of trying and making people work for those people brings their value in the story up, or brings their value in the world up. I guess the other way I would do it is just how much does it connect to the characters. We've had players where they've automatically adapted to a character, and then you bring more information and more history behind that character of finding out that, oh no, they're more powerful than I expected. They're here for a reason. And it kind of comes back to what you're saying, though, is they have to have a motive. The king of this country isn't going to have the same motive as the dude who shovels dirt. There's a big difference, and you have to portray that in tone if you're wanting to do so, but also in just everyday storytelling. The dude who shovels dirt isn't going to have an entourage of 16 guards that stand around him at all times when you're walking down the street. No, he's going to have the random rat that follows him because he stinks. Those types of things. So I'm going to throw that back to you then, Corey. So because I know you specifically have done 3-4 day modules set up. How do you get somebody in a one shot specifically to fall in love with an NPC to the point that they feel that emotion in a short period of time? Because in a campaign, you can build this thing over weeks and months. In a one shot, you don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to we'll take the Darkest Dream weekend, right? The whole box set of the Darkest Dream that I run over one weekend. And there are, I mean, you just saw the stack of NPC handouts, right? There's a ton of NPCs. I I think that it comes down to trying to make that connection first of all with the characters, and they make it easy because your characters already know these people. You don't have to introduce the people. You have to introduce the characters to the players, but the pre-gen characters that they're playing during my the one shots, the characters already know them, so there's an assumption that there's a connection there already, and you just build on that. So you take something that one of the characters has done recently. Exactly. Yeah, show how thick that stack is. That
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
exactly. So
Yeah.
getting that many
that's a
characters
thick stack, man.
Yeah.
in a weekend, and getting that many people, so that when the big thing that happens at the end of that, which the interesting part of that is the first little girl that you showed is one of the key pieces of one of the in last chapter adventures, or the last part of the adventure exactly. Um, and they to get them to care about these people so that they do that in a short amount of time. I would say that the way you do that is just by having somebody talk about something that that character did. So the NPC starts to identify with the character, so that the player then starts to identify with the NPC. It's kind of a, you're making this kind of leap of faith that the character can say something to that player that kind of keys into the fact, hey, we know each other. We're already we already like each other. Now, in one shots where it's just bring your own character type one shots, that's much harder because you gotta, especially 4 hour like convention one shots. And my advice there would be only have a couple of NPCs that you really drill home. This is what this person's about. This is why you're doing what you're doing. This is why you want to help this person or not, as the case may be. Um, so yeah, I think that's it. I just and it kind of goes back to my original thing is the motivation, sharing that early and often. Here's what this character is about, and have that character be about something that the players can latch onto and enjoy. So on that note, with the stack of NPCs that we are lucky that GUI Cube provides in those box sets, Um, what about when you don't have that stack with a bunch of names? How do you guys, and I'm going to pass this over to Chris, how do you handle what's that guy's name? What's that guy's name? What's that girl's name? What about that dwarf over there? What's their name? And you have players who are trying to figure out every single person in the tavern. What do you do?
Well, a lot of that is prep work. Before I usually run a campaign, like when I ran my players and purveyors support, the first thing I did was I mapped out the town. I was like, okay, we need a this person here, I needed this a person here, and that a person there, and then I wrote out bios for all of them, complete bios, names, races. If they weren't originally from the town, I wrote in a little bit about the town they were from, and I had all of my little charts of this guy loves this girl who loves this guy, and this guy's just the old guy minding his own business, and I had all these players totally mapped out. So basically, anything wild and crazy that my players threw at me, I was ready to go. I knew who was where and what was doing what. And I have my players, man. They don't leave stones unturned. So like I had this one guy who's like looking through the crowd of people trying to figure everybody out, and I'm like, okay, so you noticed this after a really good perception check. So he eventually was able to do his whole detective thing to find that there was a succubus in the town, which nobody else came anywhere near finding out. But they were able to figure it out. They found where the actual person who the succubus was posing as has been hidden. It was a lot of fun. So a lot of preparation. Russell, when we were speaking with him last week, he was talking about the Vampire Masquerade game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the way he talked about that particular module and how it was written out, in that it was just a list of these NPCs with their bios and then charts of their connection. I was just like, hey, that's how I do it. And I think that's great. I find that more valuable than writing a whole bunch of stuff about the town. If you write it about the people, because if you think about it, what is a town other than the people that occupy? Uh, yeah. I'll pass it on to one of you guys, man. What do you think of that, James?
So
How
that's
would you handle that?
so I do it two ways. If it's anybody important and it has more of a meaning to the game, they'll be written early. But your everyday townsman who sits in the bar, all improv. For all my players,
Yep.
they know I do it, and most of the time they don't know which ones are which is fantastic. So um, I have a list of about 40 names that I usually will regenerate over a period of time. Normally, I'll give 5 or 6 descriptors under names or under at the same time so that I can have an idea real quick to grab descriptive words that I need. And then I just roll through it. So if you're walking into a tavern, there's 16 people in there, and you go, hey, the guy to the left, what's his name? I'm going to go through my little sheet real quick, and I'm going to go, okay, that sounds good, and that sounds good. He's going to be an elf. He's going to be a noble. He's going to have a little bit of a coin purse on his left shoulder or on his left hip. He's going to have some very nice looking boots, a very clean cloak, and for some reason six rings on his right hand. And then I go. And I did that literally without looking at anything. But that comes with experience, and that comes with knowing. The problem happens then when a player falls in love with a character, an NPC, that you wrote 2 seconds on, or didn't write anything more than a name and a short description, or didn't have a description at the time, and then you have to go back and refill in those blanks later on at the end of the session. Um,
And you have to remember what the blanks were. That's the other part.
and if you don't, so when you're playing with a group of friends or you're playing in a small group, it's one thing. When you're playing on a stream and with live audience, that's a big difference. You don't really want to mess up those. Um,
No.
but
Audience, pay attention.
yeah, audience pays attention, and when there's 16 ears rather than 2 ears, it's a big difference. Yes, there was a guy. My players have given me crap for this since episode 1, but I have a whole backstory on this character because of this reason. We had a wizard in our first session where we actually were starting into our module or into our adventure, and they walked into the town of Grandorf, which was a broken down side town between two large cities. Originally a trade post, but over time has worn down and hasn't had the value and money coming into it. They went into the tavern and they saw a man sitting at the bar. We had just gotten the Astrinian picture of the wizard that works at the Tower of Lore, and they were like, "Well, what's he doing?" Well, he's sitting at the bar. He has a small cup on his, and he has a box sitting next to him. And our rogue, well, our agent decided that he was going to try to find out what's in the box. Well, when he opened the box, he found out it was a cup holder, a small flask of wine, and a book. And he was like, and then this whole gimmick went for the entirety of the rest of this campaign so far of why did the man carry his own wine glass, his own wine in a bar? And they ask every once in a while, and they still don't know the answer. She's sitting in here, and she's she's like trying to find things out. I know, but it's all right. I'm good at her lurking and me still keeping enough of a secrets that she doesn't get too much info.
So you bring up a good thing, and I think Chris mentioned this earlier in a way, that it, when they don't know who the NPC really is, and you build a mystery around the NPC, so that they want to know.
Yeah. So I live in worlds of three. I guess would be the best way for me to describe it, which is I give 3 very descriptive points about a character if I'm doing any character. If it's nothing more than he's got a very strange look, purple cloak on. He wears golden boots. It could be anything and anything off the wall, but you want to make sure that you're giving them enough descriptors that they're interested in looking at in understanding what the character looks like, or giving them something to picture. But don't just go off and describe everything from head to toe about the guy at the bar that you're going to speak to for 2 seconds. Now, if they dive into the story, then you got to kind of keep growing with it. But that's where improv and on the feet thinking starts to kick in.
Which you're going to have to do no matter how much prep you do.
Exactly.
Even with my method of writing out NPCs, it still comes up that I have to improv. Yeah. You just gotta.
We did an entire session and one of my players from it's in here. It was our Wednesday session where I took literally a paragraph from her backstory and I said, "Hey, we're running." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "This, we're gonna fully improv this whole thing." And it went all the way down to their characters were improv. They were asked questions that they've never thought of whatsoever, and all the people that they were speaking to was improv, and we had an absolute blast with it. So it was a good time.
Yeah, it sounds fun actually, and it can be pretty random that way, which makes it pretty hilarious.
Yeah. So,
The,
but focusing on your primary PCs is where you're going to get a lot of your depth, a lot of your intrigue, and a lot of your push to your players, which is going to be either your villains, your companions, or your. If we're going to talk this in video game terms, it's really easy. It's your friends, your villains, and your quest givers. Those can be your three options, really, of your main focused characters that you need to make sure that you have.
So I'm gonna shift gears here, and like you said, companions. I want to. How do you guys handle having NPCs who travel with or travel and are basically a part of the party? Do you do it much? And when you do it, what are some tips?
I've been
Well,
talking. Chris, go for it.
okay. I do actually right now. I have my Nexus Tower campaign players are running around with a NPC that's going to sort of guide them. But the little twist is her tongue has been removed. She cannot speak. So pretty much for her, I just got to do like little moments where I might do a perception check for her to see if I can get her to see something I need her to see to kind of get her to like, hey, look over there, kind of nudge on the one character that's gotten attached to her. Um, which everybody jokes about him having a crush on, and really just making sure you don't forget that they're an initiative too. Uh, don't don't forget about them. Don't forget about them. And you know what? If you do forget about them, try to improv a little twist. Because I have done that before, where I forgot about them in initiative, but then it's like, oh well, actually, make a perception check, guys, and it's like you see drag marks. You follow those drag marks. Oh, you find your friend being dragged away by a group of assassins, or whatever kind of little thing you have to improv in the moment. If you do something like that, just try not to let your players see you sweat, and just improv. James.
Yeah, I mean, you covered it really well in that one because a lot of times you are going to have to deal with that. And I'm so sorry. This alert thing is going to kill me for some reason. I cannot get it to move forward, and it's irritating the crap out of me. But besides the point, thank you again for the biddies. I will fix this, just not tonight. Um, too much has gone on tonight, and I don't know why things are acting this way. But
It's all my fault, man. I'm so sorry.
no, you're good, man. Yep.
Bad.
So I guess one of the challenges, and I'll throw it back to you, James, is and having the tongue removed makes this not as much of a challenge. But when the person playing the NPC that's traveling with the group, and the person who knows the story being the same person, player that is, um, I find it very to let the players know. Please don't just ask this NPC what they know. Please don't just lean on the NPC to try and get me to give you ideas about what to do. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge with having an NPC with the party all the time is that the players know that that character might know more, or they keep edging for that character to do more than you want them to do storyline wise. And I'll kick it back to you, James.
Okay, so that's a good point, and a lot of times it really depends on what the purpose of the NPC is. If in the story you became friendly with the NPC and you asked and there was a dialogue and build, you have to then as a game master understand what that character's thought process is. If he is not the all-knowing wizard from the end of the earth or the end of the world and has time magic and has seen the future, guess what? You can definitely be that person and be like, "Hey, so we've heard there's this cave over here, and we want to know what's inside." That NPC don't know. He don't know. It's the same as if you were a player. So you have to be willing to tell your players and do it in a way that makes the NPC sound realistic and believable. Because one thing at my table is I will throw instantly at somebody is a metagame. If you're trying to do any sort of trickery like that, you better believe that either it's going to be an on the fly meta where I'm going to change it and make it way different, or I'm going to call you out completely. And I think that is one of those things where a lot of us still play with the trope monsters. The troll is a good one, and I've had players where they're like, "Burn it with fire," and I was like, "How do you know? Have you ever seen a troll?" Well, that's how you kill trolls. And I said, "Oh, really? Roll me an intelligence check." You got a 4. You have no idea how to kill a troll. You don't know that burning it with fire it allows it to not heal anymore.
Hmm.
Don't tell me your character knows it unless it's in your backstory that you hunt monsters all day long. Like,
Yeah.
you ain't gonna see a troll just every day.
But side note on that one, I in Vanzentia, which is the expansion that's not coming, or the book that's coming out for Eastern Verdestia, there are there are these things called peat bog trolls that look just like trolls. They come out of the peat bog, but if you hit them with fire,
They,
they catch fire,
and they
they enrage,
oh god.
they get advantage, and then they explode in a 20 uh, 20-foot circle. So yeah, if
Yeah.
you're like hit it with fire, hey, 2 rounds later you're gonna be wishing you did not hit that peak bog troll with fire.
Right.
Oh my.
You do want to make sure though if you're going to do something like that, and it kind of comes back down to that rule of 3 that I go with a lot, is give some descriptives of a creature to make them know the difference. If everybody thinks it's a troll, okay, this troll is blue, and for some reason every time it walks it has a squish to its footsteps and leaves this sludge that hangs from behind, and or even better, this thing is covered in black gunk. What do you do?
Right,
Okay, now no, it's not a normal troll. It's a tar troll. Now we've got bigger problems. So now, yeah, let again. It's now lights on fire and runs at you. It's
right.
a suicide troll, kamikaze troll. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Um.
yeah,
So, because I touched on it just for a second earlier, romance in and amongst PCs and NPCs. How do you guys handle that?
I'll let you go with this one first, Corey.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. Um, well, uh, romance I think is good. I mean, romance is a good part of a story. Um, However, uh, I'm not trying to write a trashy romance novel in my game either. So there are things that I will limit, right? So romance is good. I don't mind stepping into either side of a conversation as an NPC, whether it be male, female, no matter what the relationship may be between them. Whatever that preference may be. I don't feel uncomfortable playing the NPC like it is. Um, I also don't leave it up to die rolls. I don't leave it up to, hey, make a charisma or a persuasion or something like this to get this person's interest. I don't leave it up to die rolls to get that NPC's interest. It's complete role play. And if it crosses a line that I feel isn't comfortable for myself or other players, into that trashy romance novel area, then I'll just kind of shortcut the story and say, you guys go off and have a time by the in the woods. That's what you're doing now, and then I shift my attention to the other players without getting into details because I think romance is good. I think having that connection between characters is something to encourage. but I don't think it's something that needs to be explicit as far as the sexual nature of a romance.
I completely 100% agree. Normally, what'll happen is, and it depends on the party too. These are one of those things that you have to be very upfront with people at the beginning of a campaign to make sure that your party is comfortable with certain things like this. Because you might have two or three people that are comfortable with the idea, but then other people are like, you know what, that's kind of weird. Um, I don't mind pulling the string on either direction because that conflict or that presentation is great for tension too. Because if you're romantically or connected emotionally to another one of my NPCs and that NPC gets in trouble, my expectation as a game master is to watch this specific player now become decide his decisions or her decisions will be made differently than the rest of the party because there's no additional connection with that player. Now, like he said, I'm not making smut. It's not happening. But it normally comes to a curtain cut at that point. If you're getting to the point where, it's the end of the night and it kind of goes to this camera view at that point where, you met a lady, she seems to be very attractive looking. Now, you could have been drinking the lap all night, so you don't really know exactly. And of course, I'm going to destroy your world the next morning. But if you're going to pull these stunts, sometimes I will be nice. Sometimes, you're waking up
Mm.
next to a goblin and you didn't realize it. You thought she was a halfling. She's got this big old nose and, gritty teeth that all have some sort of green in them and they jagged like that. But you didn't see that because you had beer goggles on, so you didn't know. But normally when the door shuts for the night, you take your imagination to go with it the way you want to. I'm not going to get any
Exactly.
farther than that.
Exactly. I think at that point, all I would do is just be like, okay, you go in the room, the door shuts, make a performance check, and we'll see if she's there for breakfast.
That's a good addition. In
Right?
certain
But
cases, yeah.
I am waiting for the day that I get a player that wants to do your trope horny bard that just I hate so much. Because I can't wait to the day I make them roll on the STD table.
No, I'm not gonna make my players roll on an STD table. First off, because it's a fantasy world, and I don't know what kind of STDs those are, so we won't even go there.
Oh, you have to homebrew them, buddy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Troll crabs. No, those are different. Those are way different. But those types of things, like I said, in high emotional moments, I will let romance be romance because it's never a bad thing for, especially if it's two players. And what's really cool, and you don't see it very often, is two players who aren't actually attracted to each other outside of a game. For some reason, their characters kind of just connect. When you
Mhm.
see that, though, you kind of let that play a little bit because it's such an interesting dynamic. And I've seen this between two girls. I've seen it between two guys, a guy and a girl. It doesn't matter what their actual person is. What they're playing is who's attracted to each other, and they're playing in such a heavy role playing scenario where they've adapted to that mentality. Um, Friends of mine that have done that, and I'm just like, wow, you two are way too connected in this game. And I sit back and I go, hold up, this is different because you're married, you're married. This is, you know, we'll just go with
I've
that.
seen it too, man. Yeah, it
But
happened.
it does, it happens because D&D is not your typical game. It has emotion connected to it. It has history connected to it, and those things can really mess with if you're willing to dive that deep into a player or into a character and you can feel the emotion of that character watching, like I said before when we first started this, is watching people cry or laugh or you know everybody jumps out of their seat because something awesome just happened. Those are the times where you've noticed that this is not just a game anymore, and those are the exciting moments that you get as a game master to allow those to play out, romantic or not.
yeah. It comes down to, when I think about uh, the role play games in general. Um, there was a professor in college who, when in I have a theater background, and the one of the things he said about shows that you'll go see, he said there are a lot of shows you'll go see that weren't worth the price of admission. There are some shows you'll go see that were definitely worth the price of admission, and there are other shows that you'll go see that are invaluable that you couldn't pay a price worth what you got out of the experience. And those are, I mean, just knowing that that is the type of game that I want to run. I want to run that type of game where it is, uh, it changes people, right? I mean, I'm not going to be preachy or try to put that into the game, but by facilitating a good story, the change will occur. Um, and I think that that's in good theater, in good art, and in good games. That's kind of what you're hoping for, right?
Go for it, Chris.
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree with that. Another thing that really helps is if you get a group that's running for a good while, try to find, especially if you're running multiple campaigns with that group. Something I've been able to use was when I started in this group, I was a player. Then the GM had me take over as the GM. Then my player became an NPC, so I did another campaign where they got to see the actual birth of that character that eventually became an NPC and the inevitable death of his mother. I actually got one of the players, they cried during the funeral, right? So I was able. So if you spot something, like say you put an NPC that is just like one of those, this is just a tiny little joke. Um, Skyrim first side quest where you get the love letter from Buddy Boy to the woman. You know what I mean, right? And then you might find that the characters really jive with that guy and really get attached, so you could try to, like, then later on, like James, you were mentioning earlier, that you get those little NPCs that all of a sudden, my players are really looking into this person now. Crud, I got to write some stuff out for them. But you can come up with some of your best stuff. Like I've said before, in other episodes, your players a lot of the time will end up help creating some of the best content in your campaign, so feeding off of them and making them a part of all of this is really important. James?
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example right there. Is use your players to help build your world and your connections, because and don't like require it, but definitely encourage it to, in their backstories and in their talks with you on off screen or off the game, ask those questions. Ask those a little more deeper questions. Okay, what was your family like? What were you like growing up? What did this happen? Because it could be nothing more than a sentence or two, but I've had it happen multiple times where me as a game master, I go, oh, I can run with this. Like, rabbit hole down the road for 6 sessions, you guys are going to run into so and so who's been looking for so and so. Oh, look, now you two are connected. Um, and tying your players together through an NPC is great motive as well, because when you can get more than one player who really likes an NPC, or you get a whole group who loves an NPC, you really can drive a campaign a lot differently than uh, if you're just relying strictly on a mission or a quest. But if you say, okay, hey, yeah, you guys have been hunting for gold for you guys are looking for this tomb for the last 3 or 4 games. Um, one of the stories I have from a campaign I did a couple years ago was is there was a character who they were they were trying to rescue a crashed airship, which was a friend of mine's character back when I was playing with our campaign, and I brought him into the world. Well, they had to go back to the town close by, gather up materials. Well, one of the lumberjacks that they decided they were going to pick up as part of the crew caravan coming back, they asked this dude questions, found out, he gave up his idea of being in the military. He didn't want to really do his thing. And then these guys about every 3 or 4 sessions would be like, "Hey, we're going to I'm going to cast sending or scry." Freaking kidding me? Hey, what's Jonathan doing? Like, but if you,
You caught him on the crapper.
yeah, right. I mean, there's days you're like, last time you scried on Jonathan, he was sitting reading a book, and it was like, the
50 Shades of Faye.
yeah, right there you go. See, and you do sometimes you throw really comical things at them, especially if the emotion's just so heavy at times. I've
Mm.
had to over years become a lot more lighthearted with my campaigns. A lot of my campaigns are heavy tragedy, heavy action, not so much comedy and relaxation. So um, I like to play
I
the James Bond movie type
mm.
mentality, but and then you also have the romantic sense of the woman in the bar who tries to take one of the players away and then finds out, oh well, that she's actually an assassin sent by so and so because you've been pissing off so and so. And they look at me and they're like, how did you tie this together? I was like, what do you mean how did I tie it together? Draw a line here, line here, line to here. Okay, I'm done. Like
And if you're looking for ways, if you're a DM and you're looking for new ways to kind of create some NPCs and their interconnections, think back and draw from your own experiences. Like I've seen campaigns out there, the streams that are like they revolve around a high school, and you can tell that they really drew from real life experience in there. There was a lot of, and that's another thing is familiarity, like things that the player can relate to that are familiar. Even though you might be going, obviously, you're probably going with a medieval setting, more likely than not. But you can still find those archetypes within the people in your life, and you can draw from that and kind of make a satire about it, or maybe some kind of social commentary that you yourself as a person have witnessed in your real life that you are now integrating into your story, which also could be very cathartic for you too, which I
mm-hmm.
find is another thing about this game, that it has that element where you can really sort things out in game without, I mean, being too, you don't want to be sitting there every time treating it like you're sitting at therapy, but right, but there's ways you can really get more involved with it.
Well, yeah, and by having NPCs pose some moral dilemmas, and not, and like I was saying earlier, you don't want to be preachy. You don't want to be like this is the only way to solve this dilemma. But having NPCs pose those moral dilemmas to the party, and then see how they're going to deal with it, right? Um, yeah, and having the party discuss and figure out how they're going to deal with this NPC. Um, could be that they're, in some for some of the party members, they'll be like, that person is a murderer. We should turn them in. They should be hung. And other people will be like, but they did it for this reason. We should let them go. Those types of things, and just seeing how that plays out amongst your group. Um, it's another reason. It's also a reason why my villain NPCs, I usually, if it's a main villain for a one shot or even for a campaign, they cannot be just killed by a good roll. They can be taken down and they can be subdued by a good roll, but then I unveil who that villain is, and then they have to decide what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
They may still decide to kill them. That's their
Yeah.
decision, but I don't let a good roll kill a villain. I will say, okay, yep, you've subdued them. They're at your mercy, and here's what they have to say. What do you do now? And that way, it's not, you know, a game about decapitating villains, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Get my quest. Kill the big boss. Get my loot. Get the quest. Kill the big
Yeah.
boss. Get my loot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
we're not playing it.
And you're dealing with murder hobos, right?
Yeah. So I think these are no murder hobos.
No, we don't want none of those.
No, though you guys do have a tendency for arson, since she's one of my players on our streams. So they have a tendency of arson. Um, yeah, no, these are all really good points, and hopefully these will help you guys to really bring your characters to life. Specifically, and we didn't go into really the three types of characters, which I think we're going to dive into one next week, which is going to be the villains. So that's going to
Yes.
be
Oh
our.
man.
Oh, you're not going to be with us next week.
Yeah, I won't be able to be with us
Okay,
next week.
we will
I won't
hold
have
the
internet.
we will hold the muhaha villains till 2 weeks from now. Next week we will pick the quest giver then, and
Quest.
next
Nice.
week we will have Josh from Dungeon Studios, who is another one of our awesome partners that we've been building this stream with, and
It's my boss.
Chris works back to back with him, so he's going to come on here to take Corey's spot for the week. And every once in a while, we're going to kick Chris out every once and bring Josh on because he's been really wanting to come onto the stream. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, so we're gonna definitely. Is there any questions you all have about just the idea of how to bring your NPCs to life? I'm going to give it a little bit of time. Is there any final comments you guys have that we didn't go over of how to bring NPCs to life?
I think for this episode I covered it pretty well. I don't think you have any other points, Corey?
No, I'm just glad that we're gonna kind of go into the different types of NPCs. I think that's a great idea. Your quest giver, how do you, which is I guess the big picture there, since I won't be around next week, is how do you get that person, that NPC, to portray a call to action to the group, right? That they have to do something because this person isn't going to be able to do it, or needs help doing it, and
Ooh.
why would they want to help this person?
Now, I have a question for the group because it seems like we're getting a lot of the same people coming back every week. Would you be more interested in diving deeper into the Dungeon Master's Guide and going through the different types of how to build an adventure? Or would you be more interested in how to build a player or an NPC better, diving through the hero's story or how to build a hero, whether it's a villain, hero, or whatnot? Because that does I think it's 12 steps for that as well, which I think would be interesting to dive into as well.
You're asking your viewers or
Yeah,
us?
yeah. Well, I mean, you know what?
Oh,
Heck,
here.
I
Yeah.
can ask the viewers. I can ask the viewers this way. Give me a second. Let me just pop in a little poll here. Nope, I don't need to view results. I don't have nothing viewing. Give me a second here.
For one person, that's your player, Ivan Docket. It would be how you get them invested.
Nvidia.
How do you get them? Yeah, how do you get them invested in the NPC? I think is what they're
Okay.
asking. Sorry if I got your tag name there wrong. I'm sure that was not how it's supposed to be said, but I checked.
So we've got the adventure, the person slash player, or other. Please suggest. Alright, cool. Let me just pop this out here. Let you guys kind of get a
So
decision.
as far as how to get players invested in NPCs, I think it comes from some of the stuff we've been talking about, which is a rich story, some like James was saying, some descriptors to help them picture that NPC, um, and then what communicating what that person is about and what they need. Um, because one of the things, especially with people who like role play, as opposed to the murder hobo style, give me a quest, let me do it, give me my loot. They really want to be a part of that story. So by having that NPC um, help tell their story. And this goes back to episode 1 of Tavern Talks, when James was talking about know the backstory for your character, your player characters, right? So if you want to get somebody invested, and one of your player characters has been to the Vile Desolation in the world of Zyathe, then maybe one of these NPCs has been there too and has some things to say about it. So knowing those backstories, knowing those things, and then kind of pulling them in if you want them to be invested. On the other hand, if you don't want them to be invested in this NPC because it's just, bar patron number 3, still give them some descriptors, but maybe, it's just, here's this person. And if they want to follow up, then they can.
Mhm. And I would agree with you there, especially on the fact of drawing off of their background stories. Figure out, play off of your player's empathy. You find what they're empathetic towards. You may even try to draw, like, if they're your real life players, you probably know about them on a very personal level, and you can find those little, those little quirks about them that, it's like, oh, I really don't like people who do this, or I love people like this, and then you try to kind of weave that into the NPC a little bit. So drawing off of your PCs is a great tool. Like I said before, they'll give you pure gold.
I'm looking for something. One second. Let you guys continue your conversation.
I'm going to jump back, way back to the beginning of the episode here, Chris. You have all of this town built out, right? And you said you kind of mapped out all the NPCs. Um, is that kind of just in sheets of notes? Do you have that on index cards? How do you manage a town full of people?
Ooh.
I'll get the binder.
Oh, it's a binder.
Now that is something that I would love to hear other people's opinions on. Is how do you prepare a campaign? How do you prepare an adventure? And seeing how other people do it. So we might even swap our role, since everybody wants. It seems like the only person that voted was for the adventure. Um, we might swap our role and next week do, because I know Josh is working hard on Enron, which is their world. Corey and I have worked heavily in the GUI Cube world of Zyothe. I've built multiple campaigns in my own homebrew world, and I'm sure Chris has done the same. So, and Chris is also one of the writers for Enron. So, I think maybe, and I think Josh will be excited to have fun with that as well, to come on and talk about the creation process of putting a campaign together. How do you set it up? How do you structure it? What you would take as your most important things that you want to make sure are flushed out early. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do breaking down the adventure next week. So showing how people actually structure their stuff, what programs you use, if you have anything specific or unique that will help players. And we'll toss a whole bunch of links in that one next week. And yeah, that's the way we're going to go with that one. And then Corey can come back the following week for the talk on the evil villains. Ha ha ha. That's right.
Or the sympathetic villains.
Or the
That, that's
sympathetic
that's gonna
villain,
be
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
you know what? Thanos. Thanos is actually
Right?
a very complex character. I like that is a great example of a villain right there.
Oh, he really is. He's a fantastic villain who had his own motive. It wasn't the I want to be ruler of everything. No, he just wanted to make everything easier. for the world.
Yeah, he didn't want worshippers. He literally like, no, I just want everybody to have everything they need, and then I'm gonna take off to my farm and just chill, retire. Although the meme out there telling you, hey, Thanos, just double the resources. Think, man, think. Right? Like you didn't
Right.
actually have to get rid of half the people. You could have just made the resources infinite.
Oh yeah, 100%. But you
It's all
know,
perspective.
yeah, it's his own perspective of things. Um, but yeah, I think that's the way we're going to wrap this up. Is we're going to go into the actual adventure creation, what you'd like to do, how do you come up with a direction, and how do you work backwards or forwards depending on how you play the game. And before we go, I just want to give a shout out, and hopefully this doesn't flag me, but on a different account. Uh, the everyone is from a Discord channel, but we have our sponsor Nix, who is doing a charity stream tomorrow. It'd be really cool if you all would hop over there, check him out. They're doing Sea of Thieves, and they're trying to get to it looks like 2K. And this is going to, and then they're going to do a couple giveaways. What he does is he makes all these cool, nerdy, and creative designs that can be etched into glassware and other types of metal and stuff like that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so they're doing a giveaway donation from the amazing folks at Verilus Codes for a pride kilt and a pair of black tied pirate boots. You know, I always love me a pair of pirate boots. So,
And
and
I love me a kilt, man.
there
Let's
you
do
go.
this.
Kilt, not. Yeah, that's what I said, right? Kilt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
kilt. Kilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Punkle Nix, please go check him out. He's definitely been helping us, just pushing out our name and stuff, and we want to give him that extra um, boost. And especially since it's a charity stream, we want to support all the charities out there because that's what these communities are built for. So until then, next week I will have a glass. We were so busy on tech that I did not grab my glass of beers for the night. But next week I will have it. Chris will join me as well as Josh. Corey is
Covered with
Corey is drinking for all of us tonight. So
Yes, he is.
yeah,
Buddy.
a brewery right down the road here in Montana, Tamarack. This was not full when I started the night. It was like this much, but hey,
yeah. So uh, until then,
Uh,
bring your favorite glass of or favorite beverage. Come back to the tavern, and we will see you guys all next week.
got my coffee. Night, guys.
Night.